or some help text, you put it in the help text field. Sometimes I put the same thing in the description and help text, but the description is important for us. Like if you're working with a team of admins, or you want to remember, like, why the heck did I ever create this field, or what was this field supposed to do? Especially when you're writing formulas, it's really good to put a description in there, because you want to make sure you have a nicely documented Salesforce org, right? Like you're going to be creating a lot of things, working on a lot of projects. You're never going to remember why you created the 5,000 fields that are in your org. Right? So it's a great idea if it's a vague field or it's something you think people are going to need help with, to populate those two fields. And then it tells you on the right-hand side what object it's on and what kind of data it is, what kind of record it is. So the data type here is pick list. So it's telling us that's a pick list, and we can see that the last person who modified it was Farah, and we can see when it was created. And sometimes you need that information. You need to go back and say, well, who created this field? This wasn't here yesterday. You can go in the back end of the field and see who modified it and who created it. Then under general options is whether or not you want to make it required or not. So do you want that field to be required? And do you want it to have a default value? Right? So if you say, for instance, we have students in the system and we're doing a build for a school and we want male and female to always be populated, then we want to make sure we hit required here. When you set it as required in the back end here, it makes sure that you are respecting that requirement every time. So then we have field dependencies. You guys know a little bit about field dependencies because we built them. And then there's validation rules. We haven't written any validation rules, but hopefully we'll get a chance to do it in this class. And then under values, it's telling us what our values are. And under inactive values, we can deactivate values that we might no longer be using. So we might have, we're not selling, green cars anymore. We can deactivate the green car value, but we would still have, if we had, like we might make a decision today as a business that we're never selling green cars again. We just don't like green, right? If that's the case, we deactivate it, but we will still have our historical information, right? That of the green cars that we might have sold in the past. So on this screen, you can also order the order of your values by hitting the reorder button. So if you hit reorder, you can say, how do I want the values to appear in that pick list? If you want it in alphabetical order, just click display values in alphabetical order, right? You just click the checkbox. Mm-hmm. Here, if you want a default value, you will select the default value. So I'll give you an example. If you're tracking an application process, say I'm creating application processes for a school, and the application process is new, like new student, applied, denied. Those are my 3 stages. I might always want the default value to be new. So anytime you create a student, it's going to automatically default to new until you change it. Until you change it to applied, or you change it. Like, I don't want that value to just be none. Every record that we create in Salesforce, I want it to have that value of new out the box, right? That's what that is. And then the values, the order of the values, if I'm doing an application process and the values are new, accepted, and denied, those are my 3 values, I don't want that in alphabetical order. I want it in the order of the business process. Right? I want new to be the first value. I want accepted to be the second value. And I want denied to be the third value. I don't want it in alphabetical order. For color, this is a perfect example where I would put it in alphabetical order. So click display values alphabetically and save it. So now I'm asking Farah, because we're trying to fix her file. Let's click on principal view. That's what I asked her to do, is to click on the principal view button. And I asked her to copy the values, which I think you already did.
Yeah.
But I wanted her to copy the values because I don't want to click back and forth to try to remember what those values are. So I'm just copying them. And then I'm going to, that copy feature comes in handy in so many instances. So just so long as you know how to do it, you might like have created a record on the wrong object. You need to create it again. Then you don't want to have to type in each of them. Just grab that principal view so you can copy the values. Now go back to your Excel sheet. And let's just, on the first one where it says white, let's paste your list that you just copied. And then go to Platinum White Pearl and do the same thing again. and then change lunar silver and metallic to something that's in that list above. Yeah.
That's not or does?
Yeah, like that does match what's in the list above, like your values. So remember, those nice values that she had, lunar, platinum, blah, 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 those are great, but we can't put those in Salesforce because they don't exist. So the only thing that Farah could do is go create those values in Salesforce. She can do that, right? Or change these colors to colors that exist in Salesforce. So we just did, what was easier. And we just went ahead and created put the colors that were in Salesforce. But in the real world, we probably wouldn't do that, right? If a client gives us a file and says, I have a platinum lunar car and I have a blue metallic, and those are the colors they want to see in Salesforce. They don't want you changing it to some standard value, right? So what would you do in that instance?
I would go and create the same thing with the color, just change it.
Go back to Salesforce. Yeah. Right there. I would go and add. Click the new button, and now Acura wants midnight blue, and you would just type in midnight blue, and you would add it to the record type it belongs to.
Yeah.
I need midnight blue available in that pick list on my vehicle object. Make sense?
Yes.
So that's what you would do. That's why a lot of times when we're doing Salesforce builds, we're just going back and forth and customizing the org for them. Right? If they want midnight blue, give them midnight blue. That's their color. We need it in there. We put it in there. So let's go back to our data file. Now that row is fixed, let's continue going through the process.
Okay.
And let's look at the next column and make sure that one's okay. So the year looks good. The prices all look correct. The mileage looks correct. And then just make sure that all of those are true, false values. And then the Bluetooth one, we want to change those yeses to true. In column S.
Last one.
Oh.
We want to make that consistent. So they all have Bluetooth, so we want to make those all true. Because remember we talked about Boolean values?
Yes.
Right? And the Boolean values, they're going to recognize the 0, 1, and the true and false. So we're going to change that to true. And then in the last column for quantity, we didn't create the quantity field yet, did we?
We did on the last class. Didn't we?
Yeah, we did, and
we did.
If you're looking,
we get the files.
If you're looking for the record type ID, go to the object in the object manager, and on the left-hand side, there's going to be a link that says record type, and then you're going to look in the URL and grab the record type. Okay, so good. We're here. Let's go to your page layout for inventory, Farah. Go all inventory. And let's hit new. Oh, actually, why did I even do that? Go back to where we just were. I wanted to make sure we had the quantity field. That's my train of thought.
Where on the?
Yeah, I just want to double check that your quantity field is in Salesforce. So let's go to Salesforce and just verify that field is there.
Okay. It's right here now?
Yep, there it is. Cool. Let's go back to your file. We're going to do one last thing. Sometimes the Excel files get corrupt and weird things just happen. I don't know why. It just does. And so sometimes what I do is, if I'm having errors and Salesforce is saying there's an extra column or there's an extra row or we can't, blah, 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 what I do is I create a new worksheet. So click anywhere in the document and click Control A. Or I don't know what it is for a Mac. For a PC. It might be Shift A.
To copy?
No, click in the data file, like where there's data. Yeah, I only want to, and click I think it's Control A or Shift A. We only want to select the data. We don't want to select empty rows.
There's Control A for.
Okay. Control A if you're on a PC and Command A if you're on a Mac. Now copy this.
Control C.
Yep. And then open another tab in the bottom.
Oh, no, another tab.
Yeah, just another tab. And then paste it in there.
Control V if you want.
And delete the first tab. That one, just delete that one. Because that's the one that was giving us issues. And then let's save this as a CSV and let's try to upload the data again.
Okay.
Yep, just save it. You can leave that name the same.
Okay. I'm gonna just overwrite that one.
Yep, with this new one. And then let's try to do the upload again.
Okay.
A lot of times you can fix data migration issues by simply fixing your file. A lot of the data issues that come up when you're using any of the data loaders is because you have bad data. Yeah, you can, yeah, I did mention that. If it's a Boolean field, you can use true and false or 0 and 1. They're both the same. They're both Boolean. 0, 1, true, false.
True, false.
Okay, so let's go ahead and import that file again.
Yeah.
I mean, Andrew, honestly, I only use true and false. I don't even, like, I pick one and I just stick with it. I don't make it complicated. Like, sometimes I'm using 0, 1. Nope, I just use what I know. Okay, so just hit upload and get your file in there, and hopefully this works. Because I've been like, oh my God, I've been going crazy with this data loader the past few days.
Oh my God, it's wait, which one did I do? It was in my mind. Sorry.
New inventory.
Sorry, on your desktop.
It's on my desktop. Was it?
It's right here. On the, it says new inventory 2019.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And let's just take a look at these fields and make sure they're all mapped correctly. So the first column is your source header. So that is what is in your Excel file. The second column is sample data. They're just giving you an idea of what it looks like. That's helpful for you to look at it, because if you see something funky, like, and you're like, oh my God, maybe my file's messed up, you might need to go back to it. So just quickly look at it. This is just giving you an opportunity to check that sample data looks like what that data should be. So look at your source header, right? The sample data is an ID. Good. That's exactly what it should be. The type is new. Yes. The make is Acura, and they just put some samples in there so you can see. Mileage is 0, price is currency, year is 2019. All of that stuff looks good. They're all true falses. There's no yes, no's in there. And the quantity is a number 1. So that all looks great. Now let's look at the third column, which is Salesforce field. And there we want to make sure that the source header is mapped to the Salesforce field. So remember, Salesforce doesn't read English. All Salesforce know is map to map. So on the left-hand side, you're saying, my Excel column should map to this Salesforce field. And sometimes those headers are different. Like, you might have a file that has different headers. It does not matter, right? So you're creating the mapping. So whatever you tell Salesforce to map it to is fine. So if leather seats is leather in your file and it's leather seats in Salesforce, that's fine. All you're doing is creating the mapping. But if you create your headers in Excel the same as your headers in Salesforce, the benefit is that it would auto map just like this file did. Because a lot of times it doesn't auto map. So the data loader is like, you can save your map files with Apex Data Loader, but the thing that Apex Data Loader doesn't do very well is map files, like what Data Loader IO just did. Mm-hmm. It tries and it does it, but it's not as good as how this tool does it. So let's take a look and make sure that all of our mappings are correct. The first one looks good. We're mapping record type ID to record type ID. Great. We're mapping type to type, make to make, model to model, body style, color, year to year, price to price, mileage to mileage, sunroof, third row seat, adjustable pedal, DVD, parking, leather, power seats, memory seats, heated seats, and there's one more, scroll down, oh, there's 2 more, Bluetooth and quantity. So all of the arrows there are telling us this is mapped to this. So good. Now we can hit next. And then here on this screen is a summary. We looked at it earlier today when we did it the first time, but here is saying we're inserting inventory. I always read this part because sometimes when you're like this past week when I've been doing like a bazillion data migrations, you're like, it becomes, it's like when you're driving for hours and everything looks the same. It's the same thing. It's like if you're doing a lot of data migrations back to back, you may forget, like, did I click insert or did I click update or did I click delete? Oh, let me make sure and double check. So before I hit that import button, I always just quickly read this summary, making sure I'm in the right org. when we're managing multiple dev orgs, right? We have this dev org and that dev org and this client and the classwork org. We want to make sure we are logged into the correct org. Look at that connection and verify that it's correct. Object, make sure you're updating to the correct object, right? We're updating vehicles to inventory. Cool, we can move on. The type, import, right? Make sure that it's performing the action that you're expecting it to perform. It's not a delete when it's supposed to be an import. And then how many rows? Let's just verify that the rows are close to the rows, you know, that we have in our file. We know that Farah has 24 records in her file, so that looks good. We're not scheduling this task because
What does that mean, scheduling tasks?
it means you can schedule it to run at a certain
Oh,
time.
to run out of, okay.
Yeah. So maybe you have a file like this file that's here and you're updating it, right? And you're scheduling it. You're saying, I want this file to continue to update and load into Salesforce every hour.
Okay.
Or weekly or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then what we talked about earlier was the API mode. So we're going to use the batch API because we only have 24 records. But if this file had 50,000 records, we want to use the bulk API. And then if you want the email results sent to you by email, you can. One thing that you guys are going to notice is when you hit the save and run button, it's going to queue it, right? So like you got to get in line and wait for Data Loader to process your batch. So you might be doing other projects. You might walk away. So that's why you would click send me the results via email, because you have a giant file. You know it's going to take a couple minutes. You want to go do something else. Hit send me the results. Or you might want confirmation that it was done so you can send it to your client or to your boss, or maybe, you know, one of the departments in your organization, the accounting department asks you to upload new transactions. They sent you a file. You want to verify when it's done. You upload the file for them. You get the send me email results. And when the email results come, you forward that to the accounting team and say, hey, your data load is done. So that's another reason why you might want to get it. Send me the email results.
Yeah, email. Okay.
So go ahead and hit save and run, and let's see if our file finally uploads. So you see here where it says task run. Right now this is running, and it's telling us that it's queued. So we're just waiting for it to be our turn for the upload to happen. Because this is a cloud-based solution, just like Salesforce, they have that multi-tenancy architecture. So there might be, you know, a bazillion people uploading data at the same time. So it means that it might take us a little while because we're in the queue waiting for our turn.
There it is now.
So now 24 successes. So let's just make sure, because remember yesterday, look at Farah's files. You can see that 19 hours ago, 11 hours ago, she was running these inventory uploads and they weren't coming out, right? Her work is just, they weren't showing any data. We know that we had this crazy issue. So we can't just take this at face value. We need to go to Salesforce and make sure that that data is now in there as expected. So let's go here and refresh the page. There it is.
Yay!
So this is
That
what
is so exciting to see.
it is, and this is why I'm telling you guys that sometimes you might get an error and you can't tell what that error is from. Like Salesforce is going to give you a little bit of information, but you don't really know what the error is for. And so that's why you need to go through step by step to fix all of the easy stuff before you go and escalate, right? So fix your file. 90% of migration issues are you have a problem in your data file. And you don't even understand. The file that I was working on yesterday, oh my God. And it looked perfect, but like I had so many errors. But the reason was because, and I'll share this with you guys because it's helpful for you to know. I've been doing this kind of stuff for 9 years. I'm a data migration expert. This is what I do, right? Like for a living. This is all I've done for a long time. And so, you know, I'm assuming that my file is okay. And yesterday, because I was data loading for so many days in a row, and I've been working really late every night, I've been super, super, super busy this week. I was really tired when I was doing this last data migration. So what was happening is I thought my file was looking good and I was up to 12:30 at night. But what happened is because I was so tired, I made a bunch of mistakes. And those mistakes caused I wasn't catching them. Just like, you know, Farah and Cynthia were up to late at night last night. They weren't catching these simple errors that we just pointed out and we fixed, right? Sometimes when you're really tired, or you've been at it too long, that will happen because your brain starts to, it's like when you're driving for hours, if you go from Florida to New York in your car, after a while, like your brain just starts shutting down on you. You need to get out the car, you need to walk around, you need to look at something else because it becomes super redundant, and no matter what you do, you will not get it right. So last
well, Cynthia did suggest that I took a break. She said,
you have to.
"Oh yeah, take a break."
So Cynthia is correct. That's what you have to do. I'm serious, and that was my big mistake last night. I'm on a tight deadline to get this data migration done because we're going live next week with this new project, and so I've been task switching a lot because I have a million things going on this week. And the mistake that I made yesterday is I was helping out because there's another Salesforce class that runs on Tuesday, Thursday evenings. So I was helping out some students that were having issues with data loader, same problems that you guys are having, and I got super tired, and then I went back to my work at like 9:30 at night, and I knew I was tired. Like I told my husband, I was like, I probably should go to sleep because I'm so tired and I'm probably going to mess this whole thing up. I knew it. I said it. Like I said the words, and then I just kept going because the thing about data migrations is like you get to a point where you're just like, this has got to work, and like you won't give up.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sleep until this thing is done. But that could be like the ruin of you, right? So
Yeah.
I just ended up at like 12:30 at night, like I'm turning this shit off. And then I was up at 6:30 in the morning on the phone with Salesforce fixing it. But what was my problem? My data file was jacked. Like I had all this stuff. It was just crazy. It's like somehow I accidentally deleted like the people out of the households in Salesforce, so Salesforce couldn't find the map. And like, it was just bad. And so like, I've been spending all morning fixing that. And after this class, I got to get back to it. But that's what my day is like. And so I'm not telling you guys things that I don't literally have to do every day in my job. I'm just telling you that this is the real work of a system admin, right? It requires you to be thoughtful. It requires you to be super detail oriented. And if you're not, I'm not always a super detail oriented person. I talk really fast. I move really fast. My desk is always a mess, right? So like, I have to create, like, if you're not a naturally organized person, because I'm not, like, I have to work at it. You just have to make sure that you set processes for yourself. So a lot of times, like, I'll write down the steps of something that needs to be done and make sure that I access it. When I'm creating these map files, if I'm doing a new project, I always create a project plan like I showed you guys and using a G sheet just to keep track of my stuff because I know that I'm not an organized person and I can be forgetful. Like I have like a short-term memory thing where like you tell me something 5 minutes ago and I'm like, what? So like that kind of stuff, if you know that you're not super organized, you don't need to be like a born organized person who's like, there's a place for everything and everything in its place. It just means that you have to take the necessary steps and you have to discipline yourself and you have to organize yourself. And that's why I said to you guys on the call, at the beginning of the call, I know you were getting this weird error, but let's put that error to the side for a second and let's make sure that we dot our I's and cross our T's on everything that we've done. Right? We start with a clean slate. Let's delete that data. Let's start over. Let's make sure we're doing it correctly. And 90% of the time, that's going to fix your issue. And when it doesn't, then we need to log a ticket. So I also want to make sure you guys know how to log tickets. So if you go up to the arrow, the question mark sign on the top, if you are literally like just banging your head against the wall and you cannot figure it out, you want to go here and go get support. Or you can also click give feedback. If there's just some weird thing that's driving you crazy, like I worked as a product manager at Salesforce for the last 2 years, right? I helped to build the education cloud. That's a product that's being launched this year. That was my job. That's what they hired me for. So a big part of my job was thinking about what does the platform need from a user perspective? Because put yourself in the shoes of people at Salesforce, right? We are building products that you guys need to use to do your work. We constantly improve on these products by doing 3 major releases. Product teams consist of a lot of individuals. A lot of work goes into creating a new product. Like I was the product manager. I had a product marketing manager. So my job was to make sure that we had all the user stories. We knew what we were building and we were working towards building that architecture by validating those user stories against real cases. So a lot of times I'm calling up schools and I'm saying, how do you need to use Salesforce? What are your pain points, right? That information is gold because that helps me to develop our competitive advantage for Salesforce, right? I need to create a product that's better than everybody else's education product out there. And the only way I can do that is by talking to my customers and making sure I'm building the thing that they need, right? That goes back to, if you guys have done any research on agile processes and Scrum, that's what that is. It's like validating and using an iterative process to develop your products. And iterative means that we do a little bit at a time, but we're constantly validating what we're building throughout the course of the project. We don't just build an entire product and then say, hey, everybody come look at this. We don't do that, right? We say, hey, we want to build a product that can do admissions and enrollment and track attendance. So we start building the attendance, and then we bring it to the customer and say, do you like this? Great. Let's build the next phase. Do you like this? Yeah. Okay, good. Let's build the next phase. So that's iteration, right? We build the product in iterative stages. We don't just build one thing and then that's it, right? So the reason why I'm even saying all of this stuff is because as a product manager, if you guys are interested in that role, because that's what I've been for the past many years, once I figured out what the people need, then I need to go ahead and work with the engineering team that's going to actually build it. So because I'm a technical product manager, I know some of the technical parts of what needs to be built. So a lot of times I'd be right in there helping the engineers do stuff. But if you're truly working for a true agile company, the product manager wouldn't typically go and build the product. The product manager is the person who has a deep understanding of the platform, the product, the user stories, the use cases, the customers, the industry. They have all that experience, right? And they go to the engineering team. Now, the engineering team, they don't know a damn thing, right? They know engineering. They don't necessarily know a particular industry. I'm not saying none of them do. I'm just saying for the most part, if we have engineers, they don't know education. They never worked in a school, right? They've never built education products for K-12. That's what I do. That's what I've done. And that's why the product manager is important. The product manager is sort of an SME. You ever hear that term? SME is subject matter expert. So usually when you hire a product manager, you want to get somebody who is an expert, right? So Selena is an education expert because that's all I've done for the last 16 years, right? I know the business and I know what schools do. And I've worked in so many different roles in education. I can provide that level of context. And I have a network. All those 16 years, I've met thousands of people who I can ask questions of, right? So that's why I got hired at Salesforce. The engineering team, they can engineer Salesforce products, right? They went to school for computer science. They have master's degrees from MIT. They have all of this, experience. I don't have that same level of experience. So, but they don't have the experience I have, and I don't have the experience they have. I have to tell them what they need to build. So a big part of my job was managing what the engineering team did from day to day. My job is hey, these are the 500 things we need to do to build this product. So you guys need to work on this 100 this week and the next 100 the next week. And this is what we're doing, and the feedback and the issues and bug tracking and all that stuff as a product is being developed, right? So if we take a step back and we say, okay, how does the product manager become that subject matter expert? How? Because when you go work as a system admin, even if you're not even if your title is not product manager, you're managing Salesforce and whatever products you build in your org. We just built a product called Dealer Pro. That's a product, right? And we need to manage that product because we are the system admins. We developed the app. So this is where help and training comes into play. There are product managers that you guys don't even know, but they're there. They're in the back end, and they care about the issues that you guys are running into. So that's why logging a ticket is important. If you truly get stuck, go ahead and log a ticket. But if you have feedback for these product teams who rely on your feedback, right? We cannot do our jobs without end user feedback. So go ahead and hit that give feedback to Salesforce. There's also a give feedback to Salesforce button in Trailhead. And it allows you to air your grievances or tell them that you really like something or say, hey, my life would be so much easier if you guys were to change this to that. They take that feedback into consideration. There's not any feedback that comes into Salesforce that we don't read. When I worked as education manager, we read every piece of feedback that came in and responded to it. Even if you didn't get an email directly, there was a team looking into it and making sure that, that was addressed to make sure, is this a real thing? Is this something we need to think about? How do we, how do we solve for this? So I just want to make sure you guys know how to log those support tickets. So under help and training, click on Get Support. Here is if you have an actual case. It's not feedback, it's an issue. A feedback could be, Why do I have to click 5 times to get to this thing? It's really crazy. Like, for example, why do I have to go into the URL to pull out the record type ID? Why can't you just put the record type ID in the details of the record type page? That would make my life easier. That's a great piece of feedback to send to Salesforce. And when you're new in your career, you might not have any feedback. Like, it took a long time. I was working years in Salesforce before I felt comfortable to offer feedback, because I didn't know enough about the damn tools to know whether or not I needed to give feedback about something until I was using a lot. Then I'm like, oh, okay, this would make my life easier. So when you come on this page, you have documentation that you can look up. You can do getting started, which is like best practices and all kind of stuff. And you can connect with different experts, or you can do Trailhead, the third one, which is what we've been doing. So those top 3 boxes are called self-service. That means you have an issue, but you're willing to do a little bit of research on your own to figure out the project, right? And so Farah and Cynthia spent a lot of time doing their own research yesterday. That's what they were doing. They were trying to figure out what the heck was wrong with the data file and why it was giving them some ridiculous errors that they could not figure out. Because even when she showed me the error on the screen this morning, I didn't even know. Right? And I've been doing this for a long time. I'm like, I don't know why the hell you're getting all these records with no data, but let's go back to the file and figure it out. Right? I didn't know the answer. And so I went through trial and error. But yesterday they went through self-serve. That's what that is. Checking the documentation, Googling it, getting started, doing some trailheads. Now, if you scroll down a little bit, we have additional support services. So top support resources is support resources that are curated by customers for customers. So we have a lot of like people in the ecosystem that create content, and Salesforce makes that available to you. And just so that you guys know, what we're looking at right now on this screen is a product that Salesforce has called Salesforce Knowledge. Salesforce Knowledge means that you can write articles, right? You or the customer or Salesforce people can go and write articles, and it's stored in some giant Salesforce org in the cloud. And when a person has a problem, they can come to this site and they can click search resources, and those articles will pop up. It is an actual product that Salesforce has called Knowledge. If you are working with an organization that wants to set up Knowledge for their organization so that their employees can self-serve, you can build that with Salesforce Knowledge. I did it for a big nonprofit that I was working for. I worked for a nonprofit called New Leaders, and I was there for a couple years. And what they did is they helped failing schools turn around. They were a very well-funded organization. They're national. They're headquartered in New York and Oakland, but they have offices all across the U.S. They work with schools that are like about to get closed down because they're failing. And what they do is they hire like talent, like principals and assistant principals that are skilled with working at schools that are having major issues, and they work to put that school back on track. That's what New Leaders does. So New Leaders wanted to create articles of best practices to help these principals do their jobs. They wanted to make sure that, like, hey, if you have a bunch of parents that don't show up for PTA, what are some of the things that you can do to engage parents? There's an article for that. Somebody wrote an article. Somebody in California did an amazing job of turning around a school that made the news. Share your best practices. We can put them in a Salesforce org as a resource article, and people can come search those resources. And that can all be done with the Salesforce product called Knowledge. If you want to know more about it, you can look it up, Google it, and read about Knowledge. So then Salesforce also offers success plans. So if you look under the category that says get to know your success plan features, that piece there tells us how to, like for customers, they can buy support packages in a couple of different ways. So they can buy support packages from Salesforce, or they can buy support packages from Salesforce consultants. So there are Salesforce consultants out there that sell support packages. They're like, we'll build your org for you, and we'll give you a support package, and whenever you need to use it, you can use it. We charge $50 to $100 an hour, whatever it is, right? They'll sign the support contract. They never have to call you, but if they need you, they'll call you, and at that time, they'll be billed. Salesforce has a couple of different plans called success plans that allow you to purchase different levels of Salesforce support, where you can go in and have a system admin either dedicated to your team, somebody that works at Salesforce that will help you. So some organizations that have more budget and more money, because it's a couple $1,000s a year to buy a success plan, and there's different levels of success plans and what's called accelerators. So they're like little things, like buckets of support you can buy to accelerate a particular project, for example. So just so that you know, there are success plan features out there. When I was a new admin working at a new company using Salesforce for the first time, we purchased Premier Success for 1 year just so that I could have additional support because I was a new admin. So that's one thing you could advocate for. When you go to an organization, you can say, well, look, it'd be helpful to me so I can get this work done quicker if we have Premier Success, and you can get your organization to purchase it. It's something like $5,000 a year. And so there's all this stuff, right? And then the Premier Toolkit is if you have Salesforce, the Success Plan, the Premier support, you will have toolkits available to you. And then there's events, right? So they might tell you, register for a webinar or come to the New York World Tour. We're having office hours. A lot of the different products at Salesforce, they all have office hours, MPSP office hours, Sales Cloud's office hours. You can sign up for all that kind of stuff. Just like PepUp Tech does office hours, Salesforce does office hours around all their products. They do it on different schedules, different teams have it, and you can join those office hours to learn more about products. And then in the bottom, they have other resources like training and Salesforce developer tools, administrator tools, the partner community. If you're a partner, like a person who does Salesforce implementations or you build products, you can join the partner community. Then you guys are familiar with the App Exchange, and then they're telling you how to transition to Lightning. So if you scroll back up to the top and you go to the right here where Blaze is at, so you see where it says support services, go down just a little bit more. Right here, so Blaze is the little wolf. This is support services. So if you log in, if you have a success plan, you can log in here and you can ask Blaze and do immediate chat. So that's another cool feature of having Premier Support. If you are a Premier Support Salesforce customer, you have access to customer service chat. So you don't even have to wait. You can chat with somebody live on the fly when you have an issue. It's a strong benefit, and it's one of the things that nonprofit organizations and all organizations love if they need to on-demand support and they don't want to have to wait. Everybody who gets Salesforce gets access to basic support. Basic support is free, but what happens is you have to log a manual ticket, and it takes about 24 hours for them to get back to you. So a lot of times, if you're a nonprofit and your work is not like banking and it's not mission critical that it happens right away, for the most part, basic support is totally fine because you still have access to the self-serve features. You can still Google it. You can still phone a friend. You can do all those things, right? You might not need on-demand technical support, or your organization just might not be able to afford it or whatever. So if you do have a support service package, you would log in and do the Ask Blaze. Scroll down a little bit more. I'm looking for where you log the actual ticket. Go back to the top. I'm just looking for, where's the button? Let me go down a little bit more where it says Ask Blaze again. Sorry, click login. Yeah. And then here, click Salesforce login. And then you'll log into your org. Yep, put your password.